Hello and welcome back to another video with me, Meoni, for Final Fantasy XIV. The following video is featuring development build footage from the San Francisco Media Tour, and as such is not representative of the final product that you will see in early access and indeed the launch. This is an early build, and the attendees of the Media Tour got to play around with this build in basically two areas. They got Lakeland and they also got Ilmeg, access to one of the dungeons and essentially all of the classes, which was quite interesting. I myself didn't attend. This footage is all courtesy of Work2Game, that YouTube channel, which there'll be a link to in the description. So thank you once again to Work2Game for sharing your footage with me. It's incredibly useful and I am incredibly grateful for it. So without further ado, I must say that this video in particular will be talking about sort of like exploration. So this might not be everyone's cup of tea, and some people might want to not watch this, so I thought I'd put a disclaimer before we got into it. And in this video I want to do a walk around using Brian's footage on the actual Crystarium itself and talk about what we see, because the Crystarium in particular is the new main player hub, and I'm all sorts of excited to see what's within. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. If you don't want any spoilers, feel free to stop the video now and go on your merry way. There's plenty of other videos on the channel that are not as spoilerific as this one will be. Okay, now we can actually talk about what we're seeing. So as you can see, the approach up to the Crystarium itself has these roads which are dotted with lilac sort of trees, these purple trees, which are slightly more pink than purple, I suppose, but they're quite beautiful all the same. A little bit washed out palette, as you would imagine from something bathed in light. Now, as you can see, this is called the Exarch Gate, apparently, as we approach it, and the main entrance to the Crystarium itself has this beautiful sort of metalwork across a bridge. Now we don't actually get to walk across that ourselves. Once we zone in, we are at the front entrance, and we have this beautiful set of banners which they actually put on Instagram, if you remember from yesterday's video that I did. And yeah, that's the banner of the Crystarium, and we have this beautiful sort of metalwork and glass, and yeah, this just instantly screams 1.0 to me, and that's the original design concept around this. There's the main aetheryte, which is next to the entrance, so we'll be getting attuned to that and we'll be seeing that quite regularly. I'm sure this place will not be as empty as it looks right now, especially when it comes to launch day. You'll see lots of mini aetherytes dotted around. These are all going to be attuned to because this place is quite large, and as we look up here you'll see that the crystal tower itself in all its glory is absolutely massive. It's really difficult to get the scale of the crystal tower because when we actually play on the on the source, when you're getting attuned to doing those alliance raids, you don't actually get to go up to it first hand, as a player controlled action and sort of touch it, where in this, as you can see, Brian tried to open the door here. You can't go inside the crystal tower itself. That's locked up. Presumably there'll be some cutscenes for that, and presumably we'll be able to access that. They tried to sort of separate off areas that might be involved in storyline to sort of not overly spoil some things, but they did give the players at the San Francisco event free reign over the rest of the city. It's quite an incredible thing to see firsthand, and I think a lot of people will be enjoying the sheer scale of this. So this is the Baldaquin? I don't know what that's really, it looks a little bit like somewhere you'd take an alchemist, sort of like a medical area maybe, where they're treating wounds. I'm not really sure. Maybe they're sort of practicing on reversing the effects of the flood of light or something on targets, I don't know. So we'll go down south by the looks of it, and this is the other side of it. And as you can see, the reason that the European Media Tour event was taking place in the Barbican in London is that they had tropical plants inside what essentially is a office building full of glasswork, and you can see why they chose that, because in the middle of this area of the Crystarium you'll see there's lots of these beautiful trees and lots of glass. It's quite a fantastic place. I myself will probably end up spending a lot of time in this area just AFKing. It has a repair vendor nearby, which is always helpful, and of course there's a handy mini aetheryte as well. You can actually walk on that top carriageway area as well. It's really just designed to be lived in, isn't it? I absolutely adore this place. So this is the area called the Pendant, which presumably is the section of buildings that allow you to go up and down. as the name would probably imply. There's lots of stairs, and this is your main access way to that top gantry in the main arboretum, or auditorium, let's call it. But yeah, so there's some places you can't get to that are walled off or gated off, but for the most part I am quite surprised at how beautiful and expansive this is, and just how much they let you go and interact with. So as you can see, the glass doesn't really let a lot of light in, being an opaque blue colour, but what we can see here is lit up by these beautiful lanterns on this gantry that extends over the market board area. So there's 2 market boards below us, and indeed a retainer bell directly below this pillar that we can see on the mini-map here. We'll have a look at the map and you'll see all the other vendors are located in this section, and this is right next to the rotunda, which is the main aetheryte that we talked about earlier when we first came into the city. Now this gantry extends around the entire city, so you have both the vertical option up here and you have the down on the ground area as well. So no doubt there'll be quests requiring you to go up and down the various different heights and areas to actually talk to NPCs. This is Final Fantasy XIV, we're used to this sort of thing by now, and I'm sure Shadowbringers will be no different, because it extends the amount of time that you take to actually explore areas. These little sections leading off from the actual city don't seem to really have any purpose other than to sort of look out, which is, which is cool as well. And then down here we have like a garden area called the Sweet Sleeve, which is no doubt where the the gathering quest will be taking place. You can see pumpkins growing there and various fruit trees. I'm particularly looking forward to those quest lines. I actually really enjoyed the ones in Stormblood. And yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Idleshire, how they had this sort of garden section behind the main city area. But this one is a lot more vibrant. There's a lot more grass intertwined between all of the physical constructs that man has created over time. And yeah, it just looks really cool. You could get lost in this quite easily. There's obviously going to be some really interesting quest NPCs, like I say, dotted around here. And the views are fantastic from what I can see. So there's lots of glass structures over towards this section. I don't really know what's over here. It just looks a bit like a dead end. Yeah, it turns out it was a dead end, so Brian's turning around now. But yeah, you really get an impression of the city from walking around it that you wouldn't from just concept images. We have the wandering stairs here. Look at all these plants intertwined with the tables. This is something we haven't really seen. I mean, maybe we've seen this in Gridania slightly, with the 12's wood sort of trees, but it's not the same. These are so much more detailed, it's vibrant, there's a lot more areas to actually role-play in, I've noticed. One of the main focuses for the development team under Yoshi's control was to actually sort of diversitize the areas that you can play in, because he himself has admitted there's a lot of different types of play now that aren't just focused around the PvE or PvP content, that are actually focused around the roleplay aspect, amongst other things as well. So they've tried to really focus on giving players more expansive areas, possibly some areas with less, NPCs in them, so that people can create their own experiences, which is really cool, and I myself appreciate that, especially when it comes to video creation, and I think a lot of people will for, taking pictures as well, and that sort of community aspect that you see all the time. But in general, I love the Crystarium. It's one fantastic city, and I love the fact that they're building vertically with this design as opposed to horizontally. It means that they don't have to sort of transition into other zones. It feels a lot more sort of cramped, but at the same time quite expansive. Like, for example, you've got the delivery Moogle on the top section here. You have to go up several flights of stairs from one section of the city to get to it, or the Chocobo Porter, and then on the other side you can go down a series of stairs. There's another platform where you can put an NPC, and then another set of stairs down to some vendors, as you can see here, which is where the hunt bill, I believe, is, amongst other things. There's a few blocked off areas that I don't know if they'll have any use in the future, probably for what, cutscenes or something like that. We can't really do anything other than speculate at this point. But yeah, the area is quite well done. So instead of something like the steps of Nald and Thal, which are separated by a dotted line transition, so it's nothing like an Uldar type city, this is more of an Idleshire. And I would like to say it's a lot bigger than Idleshire, but at the same time it's quite deceptive. it's a lot more open. There's a lot more empty spaces for room for development over time. You could probably fit some event decorations here and, you know, whatever you wanted really if they plan to do that. I don't know whether or not this will include Eorzea's events. For example, like every major city-state seems to have like banners up. I doubt that it'll be the same on the first because we're in a different dimension essentially. But we'll have to wait and see on that. But it's quite interesting really to walk around. You can see there's this sort of like large buildings. There's quite a few of these dotted around that you can just climb up. Sort of a little bit like airship towers from World of Warcraft or something like that. They're definitely designed as, I guess, you know, lookout posts or maybe landing platforms for flying mounts. I'm not really sure. So this is one of the 2 cities, I believe, that are taking place in this expansion. The other one will be Ulmor. We don't have any footage of that, so that will be completely blind when we come to play that upon Shadowbringers release and indeed the early access. So hopefully this video has served to extend your hype a little bit more. It was a little bit spoilerific. Let me know what you think though about the Crystarium's layout from what you saw from this footage, and if you have time, go stop by Work2Game's YouTube channel, which there'll be a link to again in the description as I said before, and give him some love for sharing this footage with me. Thank you all kindly for watching, and I'll see you all next time.